So in this video, we're actually going to be comparing the MBA program to a traditional JD law program. Now, I see a lot of different threads online of people trying to compare the two, trying to compare maybe salary reports, comparing just the careers itself, but they're actually very, very different degrees. And I think one of the reasons people really like to compare the two is actually because they look at these salary reports, for example, they see some similarities. But one of the really important things to consider is that people coming out of a JD program are actually in very different positions in terms of their career as compared to somebody coming out of their MBA program. So, for example, the JD program itself tends to attract a lot of people right out of their undergraduate program. So they tend to attract people with very little work experience. It tends to be a 3 year, very intense program, followed by a year of articling. It's typically a 4 year endeavor overall until somebody lands a full time position. Whereas the MBA itself tends to attract people mid career, sometimes late career, sometimes at the executive level as well. And so it's very hard to compare the two. It's really not an apples to apples comparison. So for that reason alone, it's actually very different. But even more obvious than that, they're two very different degrees. They provide very distinct information, very distinct career paths, and there are some crossovers. But if you tend on practicing law, the MBA is definitely not an alternative to that. If you plan on going down the business route, the MBA does have some crossover, but it might not even provide you with the framework that you're going to need in order to be successful in that field. However, if we're going to entertain the question just for the sake of it, and we're going to look at when it would be appropriate to look at a law degree instead of an MBA program or vice versa, the only relevant examples I can personally think of would be if somebody is looking to get into maybe bulge bracket consulting, McKinsey, Bain, Boston Consulting Group would be examples of that. Maybe the only other thing I can think of is maybe even investment banking to some degree. Maybe there's certain industries or business corporate finance within a specific business, so there might be some overlap there also. But for the most part, I would say that they're two very distinct things. Another thing to also consider that's very, very important is if you do plan on looking at some of these bulge bracket consulting companies, they're typically going to look for, and this is very true for both the MBA program and the JD program, they're going to look for people who come from very high ranking programs. This tends to be very true across all of their recruitment levels, whether it's right out of your undergraduate degree or out of a graduate degree. But these bulge bracket consulting companies tend to attract anyone from MBA graduates to law degrees to medical doctors to engineers. And so while they do attract a wide variety of candidates, your function within the consulting firm is probably going to be very different depending on your educational background. So let's talk about when it might be appropriate for somebody to actually look at a JD instead of an MBA. There are sometimes people might look at the two and not know which one is best for them. One of the reasons why somebody might look at a law degree instead of an MBA might be, for example, if they have an undergraduate degree in a specific area of business. For example, if they're already a chartered accountant, they don't feel as though the MBA will provide any more value to them in the marketplace than what they already have, or maybe they just have the framework that they feel that they need, and they need a more specialized knowledge that they'll get from the JD program. One of the interesting things about the MBA program that's very different from a lot of graduate degrees is it's one of the only graduate degrees that has a lot of crossover with the undergraduate counterpart. So, for example, typical MBA programs will be a 2 year program. The first year will give you a baseline knowledge of business, so a lot of the similar courses, maybe a little bit more rigorous than what you would find at the undergraduate level. This would typically be followed by an internship, which is great for people looking to switch careers or just gain some experience and to really see if they like that specific industry before they commit to it. And that will be followed by the second year, to which they'll be able to specialize, maybe pick their major, um, and really dig deep into the actual program itself. And they wouldn't be able to do that otherwise, particularly if they're coming from an undergraduate degree other than business. And as I'm sure you all know, the MBA program itself tends to attract a lot of students that don't come from a business background. They, of course, do have some people that go in who have undergraduate degrees in commerce, but for the most part, it's a very diverse class, and they want to make sure it's inclusive for everyone. Another example might just be someone who wants to practice law. Um, the MBA is not at all a replacement for the JD, and the JD is not at all a replacement for the MBA. So what I urge people to do is to really determine what area they really want to spend some time working in, and to really determine which of the degrees is actually going to give them the best framework to be competitive in that field. And so, for example, if you want to focus on mergers and acquisitions, you want to focus on the transaction side, and you feel as though you've got the undergraduate degree in accounting and you feel like you need the legal framework to go where you want to go within that particular industry, then that might actually be a better route than the MBA. Um, like I mentioned, one is definitely not a replacement to the other. It's really about the student being introspective about what they need out of their specific degree and to really determine how that's going to happen for them. Another thing I really encourage students to do is to actually spend some time networking, spend some time talking to professors from the law school, talking to maybe even career services from the law school and the business school, by the way, as well, too, to really determine what it is they're able to offer you, to determine where you want to go and how they can help you get there. A lot of times they'll be very honest and be very courteous to you, just really helping you find your way. Talk to students in the program, students who've graduated the program, maybe students who are working currently in the industry that you intend on targeting, just to get their idea for what they feel is the best route for you. If nothing else, this is just very beneficial because both of these degrees are obviously very, very costly, both in time and money. These are obviously very crucial years in your career coming right out of your undergraduate degree or maybe early in your career as well too. So I'd hate for you to spend a lot of time working towards a degree that just might not take you where you actually want to go. The other thing as well is because of the financial commitment a lot of these degrees carry with them, you might end up in a job that you might not necessarily have taken otherwise, but are kind of forced to take because of the fact that you had to take out such massive loans for these degrees. So another thing to also consider is the cost, and that's a completely different beast in and of itself. But you definitely want to make sure that if you are working towards either of the two degrees, it is going to take you where you want to go. So I guess the TLDR of this entire video is, the MBA and law school are two completely different degrees. You cannot compare the two reasonably. They serve two completely different purposes. They have two distinct career paths, a little bit of crossover naturally because a lot of business has regulations and that type of thing, and so you will see some crossover there, but one is definitely not synonymous with the other. And so, like I mentioned, I urge you all to take some time and be introspective and really do research what is best for you. So that's all for this video. If you have any questions, make sure to leave it in the comment section below. I'll do my best to answer it. Make sure to tune in for some of the other videos that are going to be coming up shortly. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you soon.